Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to 14 days of Brotherhood Empowerment. Today is day 6. And if I haven't had a chance to meet you yet, my name is Evan. I get the honor of pastoring at Faith for Life Church right outside of Austin in Round Rock, Texas. And this is the Faith for Life Brotherhood. This is a group of guys, and we have 3 main points. Here's what we say in the Brotherhood. We say you never have to fight alone. No matter what you're going through, no matter what the battles are, you never have to fight alone. We want to walk alongside you. We want to be right there with you in the fight, praying for you, encouraging you, empowering you. But we also say you never have to wander alone, especially as men. Many times we feel like we need to lead and we need to know which direction we're going, but we don't always know where that direction is or exactly where we're going. So as men, we want to walk alongside you there and pray for you and help point you to God's path and just be a support system for you there. And then the third thing that we say in the Brotherhood is you never have to celebrate alone. We want to celebrate with you as God is doing things in your life, as you're becoming successful and having victories. We want to be right there with you. You don't have to be alone. All of that comes out of our foundational scripture in Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 12, which says, "And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, 2 will withstand him, and a 3-fold cord is not quickly broken." So tonight we're going to continue our 14 days of empowerment with this segment of leadership. And so if you've missed any of these, you can always go back on our YouTube page and watch them. 2 nights ago, we talked about leading yourself. Last night, we talked about leading in your home. And tonight, we're going to talk about leading in your community. So if you're able to bow your head just for a moment and close your eyes and just allow me to pray for us, we're going to jump right in. So Lord, we thank you for another opportunity to hear from you, God. And I just pray that you would speak to us tonight, that your Holy Spirit would move on our hearts and our minds, revealing what needs to be revealed. God, that we not only would learn things that we need to learn, but God, we would know how to apply this to our lives. God, we thank you for the technology to be able to do this. We thank you for Josh and his commitment to your kingdom and to empowering us tonight. And we give you praise and glory in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
So there are just automatically, you just automatically click with them. I know my microphone's messing up. So there's certain people that when you meet them, you just automatically click, you automatically connect. Our guest tonight is one of those people for me. He's one of those people, the first time I met him, we'd be talking and I'd be like, "Man, Evan, be quiet, let him talk. He's the one he's the guy, he's got the wisdom, he's got the answers. He has been a friend, an inspiration to me since we've met. He's a husband, he's a father. I'm gonna let him talk a little bit about what he's doing now. He's been a pastor and runs a nonprofit, just started an amazing podcast not too long ago, and wrote a book right during this pandemic. So, man, Josh, thank you so much for being with us tonight. Yeah. I wanted to start really quickly, and this is kind of off the cuff. I want you, because you have so much stuff going on and you're doing so much, I want you to tell everybody just a little bit about like what you're doing now, maybe a little bit of your background. Kind of introduce yourself a little bit.
Yeah. No, sounds good, man. Well, first of all, appreciate you having me on, and feel the exact same way about you. And again, I just agree. It's like we didn't set it up. God set it up, brought us together, sitting next to you, having conversations. I was like, man, is this brother really white or is he black? Like, I don't know. He's white on the outside, black on the inside. But just like we started talking about diversity and just so many things in common. And then obviously you played basketball, and that's probably part of my story is I played basketball, played college basketball, and was teammates with Anthony Tolliver, who is the one who had connected us kind of through a men's retreat that he was putting on. Played there. I think we played against ORU, but it might have been a few years after you were gone. But played basketball, and like many of us, man, thought that was my ticket to success, my ticket in life. ended up getting hurt my freshman season, was having a great year, tore my PCL. God really used that to get my attention, really redirected my life. I had met my wife at the time, just met her my freshman year of college. We ended up getting married going into my junior year, just celebrated 13 years of marriage, August 3rd. And we have 4 children, Joshua, who's 10, Joseph, who's 8, Juliana, 7, and Jada is 3. And just my wife is half Mexican, half Thai. I'm half black, half white. So my wife and I are mixed, and our kids are all mixed up. But we love it. We love diversity. And so get hurt freshman year, my wife and I get married going into junior year. God's really working in our hearts. Didn't know what life after college basketball looked like, but said, God, whatever door you open up, that's the door we'll walk through. My parents had started a nonprofit about 20 years earlier in Omaha's inner city. Our family had lived in one of the most violent neighborhoods and just saw God do some pretty radical things. So we stepped into that, thought it was going to be short term. 11 years later, I told God, man, 2 things I don't want to do is be a pastor and live in the hood. And don't tell God what you won't do, because he loves to use that as part of your story. So pastor for 10 years. During that time, led a church, started leading our nonprofit about 6 years ago. And part of what we do too is network and partner with a lot of churches, businesses, leaders in the community to really impact our inner city right here in Omaha. So definitely a lot going on, but thankful for just the journey God's had us on.
Yeah, and man, that's probably the short version, right?
That's the very short version.
Because as I've been thinking about our conversation tonight, I was like, there's so many ways I'd love to go with this, but I think I want to stick with talking about leading in our communities, because I think all the other stuff I'm gonna have to bring you back to our circle to have some of those conversations about diversity and unity and those kind of things. So I want to jump right in. When I think about men who are leading well in their communities, you're one of the first guys that comes to mind. So can you just talk to us a little bit about why it's important specifically for Christian men to be leaders in our communities?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a huge question. And I'll just say this: for me, leadership has always been at the forefront of my life and my mind, partly because I had a dad who, even at a young age, said, Josh, you're a leader. And I was just a part of an event the last 2 days called the Global Leadership Summit. And I don't know if you've been a part of that or others at your church, but it's a 2-day conference. I mean, they get the best leaders, speakers from around the country. And my first time attending the conference was in the 6th grade. And I mean, for somebody in the 6th grade to be at this conference, it cost hundreds of dollars to get there. It was in Chicago. My dad would pay, we'd stay there. And it was important for my dad to put us in positions as young people to invest in us, to really let us know that we're leaders. And so I had somebody always speaking that into my life. When I think about scripture, I look at Genesis, and God creates everything, and then God creates man. And in the process, he gives man the command to lead, but he says it's not good for man to be alone. And so he creates a helper who is just right for man. And he creates woman, and man and woman create this perfect picture. And this is what I tell men. I said, as men, we were created first. And I believe, don't go home and tell your wife this, but I believe that we are called to be first. We like that is part of the creation and the way God intended it to be. We're supposed to be the first ones to say I'm sorry, the first ones to forgive, the first ones to lead our families and lead our communities. And I believe that there is a unique calling on the lives of men to take the lead in many different ways, but specifically when it comes to this idea of leadership and leading our community. And I mean, I've heard this said from other people, and you guys have probably talked about this, but the best leaders are great followers. And ultimately, this is where I've had to learn and grow, because I grew up, to be honest with you, thinking leadership was like the person who was on stage, or leadership was the loudest person in the room. Leadership was about a position that you had. And I think one of the things that God has just continued to show me on my journey, and something I'm passionate about, is that everyone has leadership because everyone has influence. And the reason God has given that influence is because he's calling us to impact the world around us in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, man, that's so good. So everybody's a leader because everybody has influence.
Yeah.
Yeah, talk a little more about that.
Yeah, everyone has influence. And what is influence? Influence is relationships. Influence is, you know, where you work, what you do. Influence is your gifts, your God. We believe God gives every single person spiritual gifts. And those gifts allow us to do things consistent with the calling that God has on our life. Influence is the wisdom that God gives us. Influence is any opportunity we have to speak into the lives of people to help move them in the direction where they're called to make a difference. And so as fathers, we have influence in our children, in our spouses. As neighbors, we have influence with those people we live around, as people in the church. And so I think it's important that we all recognize, man, we have influence. And then we ask the question, where is the influence God's given me? Because I think that's the other cool thing is, man, you're over there in Texas. I'm in Omaha. Like, God's given us influence in different spaces. And if you look at the community of people that you're engaged with, God's given everyone a unique set of influences. And that's not by accident, that's by design, because God's saying, I want to use you in those spaces, in those spheres, to impact the world around you.
Yeah, man, that's really good. Okay, so there's some guys who may be watching. I mean, I think for a married man or a father, we can obviously start right there with the influence and the leadership. That's clear, and we've talked about that over the last couple of nights. But let's take either that person and say, okay, expand that. What other opportunities, or how do they find other opportunities to lead in their community? Or the single unmarried guy who's not yet a father, how can they find areas of their communities that they should get involved in and lead?
Yeah, no, I think number one is, I think it starts with having a vision to influence. And so there's something about knowing where you want to go. I mean, the Bible says without a vision, people perish. And so even when it comes to influence, there's something about having a vision. And I think influence starts with us. It starts with understanding who you are. There's an acrostic that I've used at different times that I really like, is in life, we all want to win. WIN. All we do is win, win, win. We all want to win. And so this winning acrostic for me helps me understand what the end goal is. What does it look like for Josh, for me to win? What does it look like for you to win? W represents who am I called to be? And I have people actually do an exercise where you write out, who am I called to be? And I have them look at 6 areas. Faith. Who am I called to be in my faith? Who am I called to be with my family? Who am I called to be when it comes to fitness, health and wellness, my friendships, my finances, and my future? And I'll have them say, I want you to write out, who am I called to be? So like in my faith, man, I want to be known as somebody who has wisdom from God. I want to be known as somebody who is known for walking by faith, not by what I see. Family. I want to be a husband my kids love to be around. I want to be I want to be a husband who lets my wife know that she's the most important thing in my life. So I think it starts with who am I called to be? Number 2, what's the impact I'm called to have? Man, I want to, like for me, I want to be known for helping people put their faith in action. I want to see the influence in everyone lead to impact everywhere. And so I start to understand who I am. And then the end is, what are the needs? This is huge when it comes to impact and influence in my community. What are the needs that I see around me? And whenever there's a need that's connected with the impact and who I'm called to be, that's where we start to get a level of clarity and vision for maybe where we're supposed to go. And so I look at my life, man, I didn't want to live in North Omaha and I didn't want to be a pastor, but I knew I wanted to make a difference. And I knew I wanted to serve people in our city that weren't having the same opportunities that I had. I had an experience where when I was in college, I was a junior in college. The kid who grew up across the street from me was shot in the back 4 times and murdered on the street we grew up in.
Ooh.
And I just remember being at his funeral, and I remember my heart was broken, and I felt like God started to ask me a series of questions and started to open my mind to the possibility of going back to my community and helping in some way. And it was just one event, but that tragedy and that need started to awaken something in me. And I think for all of us, there are needs, there's things that we see that we would want to change. Those are all signs, or those are all things that God will use to help ignite us to want to make a difference somewhere. So I think it starts with looking inside before we actually go outside to make a difference.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So I start to like think out loud a little bit and go through in my mind what you're saying. And, you know, the first thing, and we talked about this a few nights ago, like there's a lot of people that are much smarter than me that'll say, you know, something like, you know, find out what your passion is or what you do for free, and then that'll give you direction to your purpose.
Right.
I'm not so sure about that, because scripturally, like I don't see that. I see people saying, "God, you want me to do this? I don't want any part of this. I can't do this. I stutter.
Yes.
I don't."
Yes.
But there's something interesting that you're saying is, what do you see? What are the needs you see around you? And here's what I've found. I've found that me and you may look, not me and you, because me and you would probably see similar. Me and somebody else may look at a community, and I may see a set of needs, and they may be glaring and like clear to me, and someone else may see that as being, yeah, not that big a deal, but this other thing is big and glaring and a huge need.
Yep.
So are you, I think I hear you saying like, let's lean into that and what you see, because that may be God leading you and showing you some passions that he's put in you.
Yeah, I think one way some people have said it in the past is like finding a holy discontent. What do you see that frustrates you or angers you? And you're exactly right in the sense of what everybody sees is different. We all might be looking at the same picture, but the interpretation that we're getting from that picture is going to be very different. And part of that is based on the way God has wired us and based on what he's put inside of us. And I'll just say this, I can't agree with you more. Part of my story is I'm like, God, I'm not the one. I stutter. I'm this. That's been one of the biggest wrestlings for me. Is I thought when I found my calling, it would be comfortable. I wouldn't be sweating on stage. I wouldn't be nervous before I go do this. Or
if you get it right with God, it'll be easy.
Man, once I find my calling, then life is just gonna like be good. And what I found is my calling requires me to be uncomfortable. And my journey for 11 years is a journey of being uncomfortable. And I got too many stories to prove it, but it's just like God is always putting me in positions where I'm uncomfortable, but he's always saying, hey, do you trust me? Are you willing to be a part of what I want you to be? Because I wouldn't have chose the path that I'm on. And so it is this combination of like, God, who are you calling? And this is why I like the question, who am I called to be? And what are the needs that I see and the impact? because it doesn't put me into a role or a position, but it starts to help me see inside, man, this is what I value. This is what's important to me. And when I align what's important to me with what's important to God, that's when, I lean more into it. And I'll just say this too. It is a dynamic process. It's something that's always evolving and always morphing, because we don't have God's perspective. He's got this huge perspective. We're just getting little glimpses here and there, and he gives us a little, and we try to take it, and as much as possible, we try to be obedient. But man, our prayer is that we're always different than we were a year ago or we were months ago, because we're always saying, all right, Lord, change me. Yeah. This is our simple prayer. And if there's nothing else, if we just walk away with this, there's a prayer that we tell people to pray every day. And I'm not going to act like I pray it every day, but it's the most consistent prayer I've prayed for the last 11 years. Lord, change me and use me to change the world. If we pray that every day, Lord, change me. And this is why I say it's an inside out thing, because really I can only give what I have. And so it starts with me saying, all right, God, I need you to change me today. Man, I got to be less self-centered. I got to have more eyes to see what you're seeing. I need more of your heart. Change me. But every day, use me to change the world. And that use me to change the world can look like I'm encouraging somebody at the grocery store. Yeah. I want to share a couple things, unless you want to break in and share anything. So two things. Number one, when we talk about purpose, we actually talk about there's three purposes that we all have. There's a universal purpose, there's a unified purpose, and then there's a unique purpose. And I think this helps us as individuals, as men, find out where we're called to like practically get in the game. Because the universal purpose is really about two things: the Great Commandment and the Great Commission. The Great Commandment, it is universal, whether you're in Omaha, whether you're in Texas, whether you're in Chicago, whether you're in Africa. This universally applies to anybody who's a follower of Jesus. The Great Commandment, love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And then the Great Commission, which is go and make disciples. And so when we talk about impact in our community, number one, it starts there. So for us, that looks like, and we've been through seasons where we would say, all right, we're gonna actually challenge each other. How many people this week can you encourage? And so when we go to the gym, I'm actually looking for people. Like, now I go into the gym some days and I'm like, turn up these headphones. I don't want to hear nobody. I don't want to talk to nobody. But when I'm intentional and I say, all right, Lord, use me, I'm looking for people. And I'll just, start saying hi to people and starting conversation, small talk. And then before you know it, man, you're encouraging them. Or I'm at the store, the grocery store. And so we'll challenge each other. Hey, how many people can you pray for this week? How many people can you invite to church this week? And so universally, my wife had an amazing idea the other day. We drive through by these apartments every day, and there's all these kids playing outside, and they don't have very many toys. And so she said, let's go make these summer baskets, fill them up with toys, and then we'll deliver them. And so we did that. I think we made like 5 or so baskets, probably spent $200. And we did it on our date night. And we went and delivered them to these apartments with our kids. And while we delivered them, I mean, it was cool to see their reception. But one of our sons, our 8-year-old son, he said, man, when I get older and I get married, I'm going to go with my wife on date night. We're going to buy stuff for other people, and then we're going to deliver them to people who need them.
Yeah.
And just that, like that modeling. And so going back, there's the universal, which is just practical. Man, we can do that every day. We can find needs, people. I mean, just driving, we can see them. We can just encourage people. But then number 2, there's the unified purpose. And the unified purpose, and this is what's so cool about your church and your brotherhood, is this is where we lock arms with our church family and we say, all right, together, what is God calling us into? And when we join together, it helps us make a difference in a unified way, and really helps us encourage each other, and we can do things together that we can't do on our own. So it's so important that we're we're in a unified church family of people where, man, together we're locking arms. And then the last one, which everyone wants to know, what's my unique calling? Like, what is my thing? But you can't know your unique calling unless you're fully committed to the universal and the unified. And it's when you're in a brotherhood, when you're a part of family, that those people around you help draw out, help speak life into who God's created us to be. And then that's where we really start to uncover the uniqueness that God has placed in us. But everybody wants to start there, but that's actually the last place we get to really understand who we're called to be.
Man, I love that. So you have the universal purpose.
Yep.
We're all called to do. Great commandment, great commission.
Yep.
Then the unique or unified purpose would be, wherever you're connected as maybe a local church or the brotherhood or
Yep.
that inner circle that you have. And then your unique purpose comes from those two. Man, that's good.
Right.
That's really, really good. So let me ask you this though, because you talked about this driving by this apartment and seeing these kids. I might have driven by that apartment and not noticed.
Yeah.
Those kids.
Yeah.
Or maybe not noticed them as quickly. Hopefully at some point I would have noticed.
Yeah.
That's one practical way to like see a need and then just realize that maybe that's a way God's leading you and something you can do about that need. What are some other practical ways that we can make sure our eyes are open to recognize, hey, this is a need that I'm seeing that maybe I'm putting more emphasis on than somebody else, and maybe God wants me to do something about it?
Yeah. Well, let me just say this. We've lived in this neighborhood and we've driven by those apartments for 6 years almost.
So maybe I would have seen them quicker than you.
So, I mean, based on, you probably would have done something earlier than I. So just to let you know, it took us almost 6 years to do that. But I think number one, there's the desire. And I think that matters because, we see what we're looking for.
Yeah.
And praying, all right, Lord, give me eyes to see, change me, use me to change the world. And then the whole vision side. I just think of social media. We're all following people. And we're following people based on what we value. And the reality is there's a lot of people out there doing a lot of really good things. And just by following them, I get inspired to do more things and to take more action. And so I think we have to look at what we're consuming, who we're following. I look at Jesus's life and the woman at the well, or the story of the Good Samaritan. But I love the story of the woman at the well because the Bible says that he had to go through Samaria. No, he didn't.
Right,
I mean,
right.
You understand that story. He did not have to go through Samaria, and nobody wanted to go through Samaria because of the challenges that were there. Most people decided to go around Samaria, but Jesus had to go through Samaria. And for me, the reason he had to go was because he wanted to show us, man, you have to be intentional if you're going to make a difference. It's not that people didn't know the challenges that were surrounding Samaria. They knew them all too well.
Yeah.
And they intentionally decided to go around. And so there's an intentionality that we have to take responsibility and say, you know what, man, where are those places people drive around in our city? Who are those people in those communities that people don't go towards? And Jesus specifically always, he found out and went towards the marginalized, the people who were down and out, the Samaritans, in this case, the Samaritan woman.
Yeah.
And what I love about this story is, with the Black Lives Matter and the racial tension and division, I mean, just that alone, I don't know what your city looks like in your community, but there's plenty to get engaged in our community.
Yeah.
And with redlining and the way our city's been divided, we live in one of the most segregated cities in the nation. Just by driving to another part of the city, you can be a part of the solution.
Yeah.
By shopping somewhere different, by investing in organizations who are on the front lines of fighting for justice. So, but I love in Jesus too, he shows us that there was this feud between the Jews and Samaritans, and men and women didn't talk. And Jesus approaches her, connects with her. And what I see Jesus do is he values the Samaritan woman without condoning the Samaritan way. And so like, I use the Black Lives Matter. It's like, man, do you support that? Are you on board?
Yeah.
No, I can look at a Black person and say Black Lives Matter, but that has nothing to do with the organization.
Yeah.
But I can make a statement that shows what I value. And man, we value Black lives. We value the movement and what that represents. And so I think Jesus also shows us that systems are changed one story at a time. And I think sometimes we think, man, I got to change the whole system. I got to do something big. And I think all of us can look at our lives and say, you know what? It was somebody who took an interest in us that ultimately started to help change our story. And now, because our story's changed, man, our family's story or our neighbor's story or somebody else's story has changed. And so I think we really have to simplify it. And you know what? If it's just that one person, or if it's just that one act, it's like, we got to trust God for the results, for what's going to happen in that. So I think practically, where are the areas that people drive around? Who are the people in your own life? What are the neighbors, the neighborhoods, the people that you avoid that maybe God wants you to go towards? I think you could probably look up organizations practically that are on the front lines. Man, go serve, go support. Today, our organization was a part of doing kind of a drive-through. We call it a drive-through block party back to school drive. So we gave out, close to 800 backpacks with school supplies and groceries. But for us, a day like that doesn't happen unless people come and serve and volunteer and get in the game. And so it's really the generosity of people with their time and their resources that make activities like that happen. And so I would just encourage you, man, look up organizations that you can serve and be a part of. If you've got a local school, the way schools are struggling right now, find out how you can serve that principal, those teachers. Small steps ultimately, I think, lead to big results.
Yeah. And man, that's so awesome what you guys did, not just today, but you guys do stuff like that consistently. I mean, y'all are consistently community focused, and generous. And man, I look back on when we first met, and hopefully you don't remember this. Hopefully this will be something that I'm reminding you of that you don't remember. But you said you were from Omaha, and I don't know, our guys know me. Like I live in Round Rock. I don't leave Round Rock. Like I don't, like Austin is right down the road, and I'm like, yeah, that's Austin. I don't leave.
Right.
And so when I think of Nebraska, I think of country, cornfield, and you said, you were living in Omaha, and we started talking about race and unity and diversity, and you started telling me like Omaha was dangerous. I was thinking like, wait, Omaha? Like I thought it was country and cornfield. And then since then I've learned like Omaha is one of the most dangerous places
right
in the country. I want to take a little detour and and if you don't mind, just kind of tell everybody, and I believe this was as God was leading you, but you saw a need and you didn't just say, I'm going to love Omaha from afar, or I'm going to give towards Omaha, but like you immersed yourself in it. Would you mind just kind of telling a little bit of that part of your story?
Yeah. I think everybody, when you tell them Omaha, they think it's cornfields. And my mom's from Washington, D.C. My dad's from Iowa. And so whenever we go to Washington, D.C. to visit my family over there, they're always like, man, you guys live on the farm in the country. And Omaha's not huge. It's about population, about 1 million people. But inner city.
We just heard a police car go by or an ambulance go by about 10 minutes ago. I heard that.
That's funny. It's just normal for me. And I mean, pretty consistently you hear helicopters overhead.
Yeah.
And I mean, it is something that, you know, is pretty common. So Omaha's about 1 million people. And the what we call the inner city, the north part of Omaha, is probably a little under 200,000 people, probably about 150,000 people. And Omaha, though, interestingly enough, has per capita some of the most millionaires in the country. The home to Warren Buffett. I mean, we've got some great Fortune 500 companies, but North Omaha consistently per capita has been considered one of the worst places for African-American men to live. It was top 3 several years ago. It has some of the highest poverty numbers for African-American children, education rates under 50% for most minorities. I mean, there's a level of disparity in our city that's pretty stark. And Omaha has been considered one of the most segregated cities in the nation. So if you're Black, you live in the inner city. If you're white, you live in the suburbs. And it's divided by like 10 to 15 minutes of drive time. And so my parents, when I was 2 years old, my dad was a chemical engineer, pretty successful. Our family lived in the suburbs, and he felt like God had called him to make a difference. And this is, again, where you got to be careful when you ask God to use you to change the world or to make a difference, because he told God, we'll move anywhere but North Omaha. And he really wanted to go overseas and be a missionary in Africa or somewhere overseas. And long story short, there's 5 of us kids at the time. They move into a house in North Omaha. And not intentionally, but they find out that they moved into a neighborhood that the police redlined as one of the most violent neighborhoods in the city. And so my sister's best friends at age 7 and 9 were murdered. Our house was shot at, cars broken into, helicopters overhead at night. And that was one of the primary reasons I wanted to leave. Anybody who grows up in an inner city environment, the saying is work hard, get an education, and you too can move out of the ghetto. And so everybody's trying to get out. To move up in life means to move out of the community. And so communities like North Omaha have a huge void of leaders because all the leaders leave. And so when I was getting done with school, I mean, I did not want to move back to North Omaha. It was the opposite of what the definition of success was for me. But you talk about following God's call. And we said, all right, God, whatever door you open up, that's where we'll go. And so he brought us back to North Omaha. And I'll be honest with you, Evan, it was a struggle. Like my wife and I tell people, for the first 5 years, we were here out of obedience, not convenience. I mean, there was nothing attractive about what we were a part of. And actually, several years into it, 2:30 in the morning, I hear 6 gunshots, pop, 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 pop. And they sound extremely close. And so I go look out the back window, and it was the window that our 2 young sons in their bedroom. And I see this car flying up the hill. And I decided to go look out the front window, which was my wife and I's room. And I look out the front window, and next thing I know, there's a bullet. I see the explosion of a gun and a bullet heading in my direction. I roll over on the ground. And my wife is like half asleep. And I tell my wife, I was like, I think I just got shot at. And I'm like on the ground. And my Black friends tell me that was my white side looking out the window, because you're not supposed to look outside when a drive-by happens. And my wife, she's from South Omaha, which is like kind of hood too. And she's like, I would have shot at you too, looking out the window. I'm like, thank you for the support, honey. And that was Sunday morning at 2:30 a.m. I preached at church at 10 o'clock that Sunday. I was shook. And when I came back home, I went and I saw that the bullet missed our house and went through our neighbor's house. And so a question my dad would always ask when he would tell his story is, where's the most dangerous place to live? And he would always end his stories by saying the most dangerous place to live is outside the center of God's will. And I knew that, man, when I was little, I hear my dad talk, I'd be mimicking him. We would say that. But until you're confronted with getting shot at, with the fear, with the chaos that a community like this brings, my wife trying to put our kids down to sleep, and people smoking weed and playing basketball in our driveway and running on our deck and fights happening outside. It's like, man, God, this ain't the ministry. I want to make a difference, but this ain't the ministry I want it to be a part of. But we've really, again, I would say just tried to trust God. And we do believe that the most dangerous place to live is outside the center of God's will. So we're constantly saying, all right, God, where are you calling us? What are you calling us to do? But in our city recently, man, there's been a lot of shootings. I don't know how much of it is on the heels of just some of the race stuff that's going on, but we had a police officer at one of our events today, and there's just, you know, constant activity happening. And what we've learned too, we had 2 kids arrested in our church after church one day for a murder that was committed 2 nights earlier. And what we found is many of these kids are great kids, but the circumstances of their life, the way they've been brought up. I mean, one of the things I tell people with the race conversation is life's not just about the decisions that we all make. I do believe that we have to make decisions, but it's heavily determined by the decisions of others. And so many people are growing up in environments, and sometimes we look at their actions. Man, these are the people doing, you know, committing murder, shootings. Man, I'm seeing these kids, and these are the same kids that age 2 and 3 that would come up to my wife and I would say, hey, that's your baby's mama? That's your baby's daddy? And I would say, no, that's my wife. No, that's my wife. And these are our kids. And they had no concept of family or marriage because they didn't know what it looked like. So a huge part of our strategy is just being present. And so we get people that move from all over our city into the inner city, and we refurbish homes, put them in these homes, and they become what we call lighthouses. And I mean, a lighthouse is as simple as being intentional to love your neighbor, and by your life being a model. But then the other thing, which is practical, which this is something, man, anybody can take anywhere. You can be a lighthouse right where you are, no matter what. It's just being intentional. We do what we call my one day. And so we encourage everybody, pick one day out of the week and intentionally love your neighbors. That could be, for us, that could be going on a walk in our neighborhood, taking a trash bag, picking up trash. That could be baking cookies, going to neighbors' houses, handing them out. That could be, you know, finding ways to mow lawns, or just finding very practical. But if you do that over a period of time, you start to build relationships, and those relationships lead to conversations, and those conversations ultimately lead to impact.
Man, that's so good. I got a question here on YouTube. It says, what do you do when God gives you a mission, vision, and purpose, but asks you to wait? You know the mission and promise, but he is not yet giving you the opportunity.
Hello.
That's fun, right?
Hey, I just say I'm in that. I mean, I think, number one, I'm in that. And
wait, how are you in that? Because it sounds like you've identified the need.
Yeah.
In Omaha, you've immersed yourself and your family in it, and you're constantly doing things on small scales and big scales to follow that vision. So how do you feel like you're, and maybe this isn't the format for this, but how do you feel like you're in that waiting stage?
Yep. I mean, I just, try to answer it briefly. TD Jakes, I heard him say a couple years ago at a conference, he said, vision is haunting, because you see where you want to be, but you know where you are. And there's that in-between stage. And so while, for me, again, this is why I say too, the process is dynamic. While I feel like I'm living out my purpose, I also feel like God has given me vision for more, and for things that I want to see and be a part of. And so I feel like I'm in this kind of waiting period for some other things to unfold and unlock. And there's just this process where, man, I want to move forward. I'm like, God, what is it? And you know what's crazy? I mean, I don't think this is a formula for anything, but whenever I feel like God is saying something or calling me into something, it's always at least like a year later that it happens. Like, I mean, don't use that as a formula, but just like the timing of things, it's like, oh God, we feel like we're supposed to move. Year and a half later. oh man, I feel like I'm supposed to shift my position and do 2 years later, year later, year and a, and so I just think that for me, there's always more. And I think that's part of the understanding. And I'm just gonna say this: I can talk about it better than I live it, because every other day I'm telling my wife, man, I'm ready for the more. Like, man, when is this gonna happen? When are we gonna move into this? But I look at Joseph's life, between the vision and his position of being second in command. Man, there was a lot of transitions that happened in the process. And for so many of the leaders in the Bible that we see. And so I just have to keep going back to God's promises, keep trusting them. Man, God, so for you, you've given me this purpose, you've given me this mission, you've given me this, but I don't want to be outside your timing, and I don't want to be outside your will. You talk about the book, Evan. I mean, I just cannot say enough. I've been working on a book for 5 years.
Yeah. So I'm working on a book right now. And so, Josh comes out with this book, and I text him like, man, this is awesome. You know, I've been working on a book, but I'm struggling. And he was like, yeah, I wrote this in like a week. No, it wasn't a week, but it was a couple weeks, right? I mean, it wasn't long.
It wasn't long, but I've been working on another book for 5 years, and I started it because I was actually in a group of guys praying, and it was a word from God, and I felt like it was from God. Long story short, I still haven't done anything with that one. This one, God's given me revelations. In 2 weeks, it's done. And so it was just the timing of God, the conviction of God. And so that's something I try to just go back. It's like, God, you know what? I can write a book, but if it's not in your time, it's not going to be right.
Yeah.
And so I think the same thing with our purpose.
Yeah. And I can't lie, man. Knowing that you've been working on a book for years made me feel a whole lot better after I knew that you wrote this book in 2 weeks. Cause I was like, man, 2 weeks, I'm not even done with a chapter.
I literally wrote the other book that I'd never done anything with. I have at least 3 or 4 versions of it.
Yeah.
But I don't feel great about it.
So I think what you said is really interesting, because the more I think about it, I think we're always in this state of tension between some next step of vision and where we are. Yep. I might even go as far as saying, if you are not in that tension, then I'm not saying you're wrong, but you want to make sure you're not wrong.
Right.
Like, because if you get, so I know it's for me, like if I take, I never thought I'd pastor. I thought once I got done playing ball and started coaching, I thought I'd coach.
Right.
And I loved it.
Right.
And then it's kind of a long story, but in a ministry school, and then as on a staff, but not pastoring, then I knew the vision was to pastor, and there was time that I had to be patient and go through that. And I thought, well, once I get into that position of pastor, then that tension will go away.
Right.
But then it was just another point in the vision that I hadn't yet reached. And here, I don't even know, 7, 8 years in, I'm like, I don't think this ever stops.
Right. And I think it's honestly, it can be a strength and a weakness. The weakness for me is like contentment. And man, Josh, are you content with where I have you today? Because if you can't be present and content today, then you're not going to be able to be present and content where I take you to the next thing. But like you said too, it's this, man, grow, like things that are healthy grow.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of being healthy is there's always growth. And the more we grow, the more God can do things in and through our lives. And so I think it's a part of that process.
Yeah. I think for me at this point, if I lost that tension completely, I would invest some for real time in prayer, making sure I was not missing it.
That's right.
Because I think as long as we're following God, we're going to be challenged. There's going to be something else. There's, there's to whom much is given, much is required, right? And start with a little and trust you with a little, then that increases. So I think if you're not experiencing that, you might have gotten off track with God, or you might not have been as productive and faithful with what God gave you to do.
Yep.
because as long as you are, there is going to be more. There is going to be next. There is going to be something that you haven't yet gotten to. But man, that patience and that tension is not fun.
I know. Can't sugarcoat that one.
No, not at all. It's easy to look back, right? It's easy to look back and be like,
Yes.
oh
Yes.
yeah, man, this, God said this and he did it. But that
Yes.
year, 2 years in between, it was not
Yes.
that simple.
Yes. Yes.
Hey, okay, so we're running out of time, but I wanna like, and maybe this is just beating this over the head, but I want to make sure guys are clear on this, because I think, especially for us and our guys, leading in community is really important. So we see a need, and we begin to recognize that this is possibly something that God is showing us, or God has allowed us to be passionate about, and then we want to then step in and start to really, what you talked about before, like you can't leave until you serve. Yep. So start to serve that need and find ways to serve that need, whether it be an organization that's already doing it, or I don't think we went this detailed, but or you starting something
right
that can serve that need.
Yeah.
Now, apart from like packing up your family and moving into the hood and like immersing everything into that, because everybody may not be ready for that. You already mentioned one, like seeing these kids and then just seeing a need and meeting it. What are some other practical ways that the guys can like get involved in the community and serve it to eventually have leadership and influence?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the ways is mentorship, coaching. You talked about coaching.
Yeah.
Coaches have an ability through sports to impact kids' lives in a powerful way. And again, part of it's that model of just being there and giving them a picture. And so I think leveraging the power of sports is huge, especially for men just as a whole. You can't underestimate the power of a camp, of coaching a team, of investing in a young person. So I think mentorship is huge. I mean, I think I would probably have to know your community, and find organizations that are doing different things. Again, I think with the whole school system, I don't know what that looks like for you guys, but our schools need everything from the resources, iPads, school supplies for kids to be successful. We're looking at using some of our spaces for people to do some extra kind of learning, because remote learning, because some of the schools are going to be shut down. And so I just think finding what are those needs in your neighborhood, in your community. We have neighborhood associations here. And so sometimes we'll participate in the neighborhood associations. And I think too, sometimes it's meeting a need. Sometimes it's bringing encouragement. And you can bring encouragement by what we say. You can bring encouragement by saying, we're going to love on the police officers. Man, they've been going through a tough time. And so we're going to take the police officers some food, a fruit tray, and we're just going to let them know, you know what, we appreciate you guys. Yeah, there's some challenges, and yeah, there's some things, but man, as people of faith, as followers of Jesus, we know it's not always all black and white. There is some gray in there. And so we believe this, but man, we also know that we're called to love. Firefighters. I mean, people who are serving right now, the nurses that are going overtime in the hospitals, our neighbor, I just got to share this. One of the coolest stories that's happened to us is our neighbor who, I mean, is just a professed not follower of Jesus, involved in some just interesting lifestyle. And for her birthday, she said that she wanted to raise money for our nonprofit because she has amazing neighbors. And part of it, we're like, man, what have we done? Like, we haven't done anything. We've tried to be nice and intentional about loving and letting her daughter come play. And I mean, I'll never forget one day walking outside and she's crying in tears, hugging my wife. Her and her husband were going through a tough time. And before that, I mean, I wouldn't have known how close we were as neighbors. And But my wife and I were just so, I mean, it took us over the top, because we're like, you know, it's cool when you get patted on the back by a pastor, somebody who knows what you're doing, but a neighbor who is so far from Christ and just sees the small, and I'm just saying small acts of intentionality. And I got to give tons of credit to my wife. And that's where sometimes as men, it's like, man, we have to be more intentional, because we can be so busy and our wives do a great job of connecting. And, but for her to say what she said, and then we asked her, how can we support you? Well, she works at the hospital. And she said, hey, well, could you take pizza to basically the cleaning staff, because they're doing a great job. And this is the other thing, Evan, that I think is so powerful. And I kind of talked about this in my book. I think when we serve our community, people who don't believe what we believe, in our neighbors, they respect us. They want to be a part of it. It's actually one of the greatest ways we can build relationships and ultimately invite people into what we believe, just by engaging in things that make a difference in the lives of those, regardless of what they believe, but just coming alongside and saying, man, how can we practically serve?
Man, that's so good. We did a couple of years ago, our whole city, so Austin and the suburbs. I don't remember how many. A whole bunch of pastors came together, and we all did a sermon series, and we had this website, and we bought billboard ads and all this stuff, and it was called Love Where You Live. Based on this book, The Art of Neighboring, and essentially what it was love your neighbor, like just like your literal neighbor, the person who lives next door to you and across from you, like no real agenda, just love them and pray for them and see what God does. And man, that was really powerful. I'm actually considering like going through that again with our church again, because now that looks different.
Right.
like when we did that a couple of years ago in our neighborhood, there wasn't nearly as many people outside walking, riding bikes. We didn't have that much access to our neighbors, but it was also easier to just, if you had the relationship, show up with a thing of cookies or whatever. Now it's like, I don't know if I want to show up at your door, because I don't know how you'd fit. How do we, what are some practical ways like we can love our neighbor during this still Corona lockdown, uncertainty, 6 feet apart, social distancing?
I mean, I think that's where too, I think technology can be great, which again, I got to give more credit to my wife, because she's great about this stuff. I think today with different people.
Sounds like we're talking to the wrong person. Sounds like we need your wife.
Honestly, I'm getting all the credit for all the things that she's doing, especially when it comes to our family. I mean, she's. I think we sent a handful of gift cards to people through Venmo and through, just trying to love on them, people who had babies and people who, and that's what we've done for our neighbor a few times. I think of one of my thoughts I had as with men. One of the things our organization does a lot of, specifically in the inner city, is cleanup. We mow lawns. We'll find a house that needs to get repainted. We'll, get dumpsters and pick up trash. And I think just beautification, just cleanup lets people know what we're for. And again, I don't know how your city's laid out, but in our city, it is not hard to find places that need to get cleaned up. And so we'll identify an abandoned lot and we'll clean up. And what it does is neighbors come over and we've literally had this happen. They'll say, "Why are you guys cleaning this lot? You don't own it." Yeah, I know. We're a part of a church and we just want to love our community, and we just want to, and like they'll leave and they'll come back and they'll be like, "Yeah, but why are you guys doing this work? Like we just want to."
You don't have to do this.
We love our neighborhood. We just want to. Yeah, but why are you guys doing it? Like literally, they'll just like keep asking, but what's the reason? We love God. We love you guys. And so the drive-through thing, and this is more organizational, but that's kind of where we've pivoted some of our strategies as an organization. And it's powerful when you have a resource that people need. And that can actually help add value to their life. And so I think that's another question. How can I add value to my neighbor? And part of it is understanding their needs. Man, they don't have a ride. Maybe I can give them a ride once a week. Man, their parents go to work, and so the kids are left home for a day or two. Man, can you guys, we'll watch the kids for half the day. This kid grows up in a single parent home, no father. Man, can I take him to a game? Can I have him over, watch a game? Can I do some things to invest in him? So I think knowing what the needs are, and then for us as men to say, how can I be a part of meeting those needs? And again, my wife is really good on some of the, I'm more like, hey, let me mow your lawn. Like I get out there on the mower and I'll mow the lawn and I'll go pick stuff up. And hey, you need help moving? Man, I'm a great mover. I'm great with my hands.
Man, you're better than me. I ask our guys, hey, do you need help moving? If they say yes, I'm like, okay,
I know somebody. I got a whole church of people that I'm going to get you plugged in with. even just like the whole networking thing.
Yeah.
Like that's a powerful tool. And I try to ask people all the time, hey, man, if you ever looking for a job or if you need this or that, just let me know. And I don't, maybe we can connect you with somebody.
Yeah.
And so
I think, I don't know that I've seen this somewhere, but if there's, how you have all these like categories, all these personality tests or whatever, if there is one that has the option of someone who is a connector, I'm a connector. So when I'm talking to somebody, I'm immediately thinking not necessarily that I can help them, but I know somebody who can. Like, man, you got to talk to so-and-so. And that's just one of the ways God's wired me. And at this point, I just go with it. It's just have a Rolodex of what people do and who they are, not for myself, but for other people.
And I think that's part of knowing how God's wired you, because it's not a one size fits all. We're all going to have impact. And some people are great. I got friends, man, they're great on social media. And like, they just feel called to love and encourage. I mean, now you can use social media to raise money, to, bring awareness. And bringing awareness to things is just as important as getting down there and serving.
Yeah.
And so I think we just have to constantly think holistically. I'll just say this too. I think everything goes back to our beliefs. And our beliefs determine our behaviors. And so when we think about the gospel, when we think about who God's called us to be and what he wants to do, he wants to change us and he wants to use us to change the world. And if we're intentional about having eyes to see, I promise he'll show us places to serve.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we got one more question on YouTube. And this might be a little off topic, but I think it'll be good. It says, can you speak to the seeking proper godly male mentorship? We talk often about mentoring, but how do we as adults find other godly men to mentor or disciple us? So basically asking like, how do you find someone to see? And I'm gonna have to talk to him because I've talked a lot. I think there's a big difference between mentorship and discipleship.
Yeah.
Right. Like you could disciple me to grow me up and help me become a better follower of Jesus, but you could mentor me to help me be a better pastor or learn how to cut the grass. Like mentorship to me is different than discipleship, and he's using them interchangeably. I'm gonna text this guy as soon as I get off this.
It's good that you know who you're talking to.
Yeah. He knows.
I do think some of it can be semantics. But one guy gave me some advice that has stuck with me and has been pretty impactful. He said, Josh, you need to grow your circle. And he said, start with putting a list of names down of people that you want to mentor you or you want to influence your life. And he said, we're all only so many degrees of separation from each other. And he said, so start writing a list of names down and then see who you know and try to connect with them. So that's one thing I think we can do intentional. But number two, I do think, and I tell this to other guys, it's my responsibility to grow my circle.
Yeah.
People speaking into my life. And so whether it's people I already know that I put them down and I try to be intentional about finding a way to connect with them and just asking them to speak into my life, or man, I'm intentionally looking. And most of us probably have more around us than we see.
Yeah.
And so when we get intentional, it's like, oh, hold up. And this is the other thing I say, one person can't do it all.
Yeah.
Jesus was the only perfect person. He was the only person who had everything to give to his followers. The rest of us, man, I need Evan. I need this brother. I need this other brother, because they all bring different things and speak into my life in different ways. And so sometimes we try to put it on, man, I need that one. And I just think it takes a team, takes a village to disciple a brother.
I wish I would have heard that from you when I first started, like, really being intentional with discipling men, because that's so freeing, man. Because it does feel like it needs to be one person, and there's certain stuff where, you know, it's like, I don't know, man, I can't help you with that. Like, let's go back to this. I might be able to help you with this. The idea that we're all, you know, fairly connected is, there's a great story. A guy that I went to college with, and I'd say we're friends. I'm saying that loosely.
Yeah.
He probably 5, 6, 7 years ago, kind of did what you said. Like, he had read some Eugene Peterson, the pastor who wrote the Message translation. He had read some of his other books and stuff, and like, man, I would love an opportunity for that guy to, like, disciple me. And so he just writes him a letter, you know, old school, writes him a letter like, hey, here's who I am. Here's what's going on in my life. And I'm a pastor. And man, I would just love the opportunity to be able to come and talk with you. And he tells this story. He actually wrote a book not too long ago. He tells a story in his book that Eugene Peterson, right? Peterson,
yeah.
Yeah, Eugene Peterson writes him back and is like, yeah, we could do that. Like, read these books, and in 3 months, you know. But he's like, man, this would be a dream come true. So he does it, and it's like a couple weeks before he's supposed to meet, Eugene Peterson writes him back and says, hey, I'm going to have to delay it another 2 months. And he was convinced that was intentional. And so basically 6 months later, I may be getting the timing mixed up, but basically 6 months later, he actually goes to Eugene Peterson's house and stays for the weekend. And then for the rest of Eugene Peterson's life, they met like twice a year and talked on the phone.
Wow.
I mean, he genuinely turned out to be his his mentor and someone that discipled him. So, you know, God will do that crazy kind of stuff, right? Like you're trying to look right here, and I agree with that. Like, if you knew everybody in the world, who would that be? And then let's see what God does.
You never know.
My guy on YouTube he's apologizing now. He says, my bad, man. I know the difference.
He's like, I've been discipled better than that. Come on.
Yeah. He was saying that, okay, so I'm messing with him. And he's saying he actually was talking about both mentorship and discipleship.
Okay.
So he was kind of asking that on different fronts. But man, that was really good. Man, I so appreciate this. How can our guys connect with you online?
Best way to connect on social, just Josh Dotzler, Instagram, Facebook. Honestly, I'm pretty bad, but you can check it out anyway. abideomaha.org is our organization's website. That's actually where we have our podcasts. And you can just check out more information and hopefully maybe get some inspiration on some things that you guys can do, you know, right in your community, right where you guys are at. So those are probably the best places to stay connected.
Yeah. And the podcast is called
Influence to Impact. I think you can also look up Josh Dotzler on iTunes and wherever podcasts are, but it's called Influence #2 Impact.
Yeah, and that's great. And the book is called, and I meant to have it here with me. It's back there somewhere. The book is,
I have one right with me there. Called Church in Crisis.
Yeah.
And the big idea, you know, Martin Luther King said, only in the darkness can we see the stars. And it's in crisis that we have the greatest opportunity to bring light and be the church. And so it connects with what we're talking about in the sense of, man, find out where those crises are, those needs, those challenges, and find out how you can be a part of serving those and meeting those needs.
You know, as I read the book, I read it and I was thinking, this would be good for all of our guys, like not just pastors or leaders. So, fellas, here's what we're going to do. If you follow Josh on Instagram, and Coach RJ did this couple nights ago. So you got to follow Josh on Instagram. We're not going to put any work on him. If you follow him on Instagram, well, gosh, I guess all you guys aren't on Instagram. But if you follow him on Instagram and then tag me and him on some thought that he shared with us tonight, then I will buy you and send you a book.
Come on, man.
If you're not on Instagram, then send us a message. Either send me a message or send one to our church on social media, and I'll buy you and send you a book too. But if you send me a message, I'm gonna check and see if you're on Instagram, because you gotta follow Josh. That's the deal.
It's like a double win for me, man. I get followers, and then you gonna buy a book and give it to people.
Well, we'll see, man. We'll see. Sometimes our guys are a little hesitant with this stuff.
Regardless, I want to get you guys some books, and we'll get you some books over there.
Yeah. So, man, thank you so much. Is there anything that we didn't get to talk about that you want to make sure you get out before we're done?
Man. Love you. Appreciate you. Love the brotherhood and all that you guys are doing. And I'm if you can't tell, I'm just passionate to see, especially men, make a difference and have impact. And so I just want to encourage you, be intentional, excited to hear the stories and see what God does.
Well, once everything opens back up, you will definitely be here at some point in that near future. Hey, if you're not following Faith for Life Austin on YouTube, make sure and subscribe, hit the little bell so you'll know when we go live. Tomorrow night, we'll be back at 8:00 with somebody also that you guys probably are not aware of yet, don't know yet, Pastor David Blue, and he's actually, if we're talking about discipleship and mentorship, he's one of those guys I'd put in the category that's done that for me, and it's going to be amazing. So make sure and subscribe, hit that little bell so you know when we go live, and we will see you guys tomorrow night at 8 p.m.